your culture sucks, and you're contributing to these issues that you see that plague our country.
When Brandon Chrostowski was 18, he was charged with resisting arrest after originally being suspected of a drug-related offense. A judge could have imposed a 10-year term on Brandon, but instead sentenced him to 1 year of probation. Soon after this, Brandon began working with Detroit Chef George Kalergis, who became his mentor, led him to the Culinary Institute of America in New York, where he went on to earn an associate's degree in culinary arts, a bachelor's degree in business and restaurant management. Chef Brandon Chrostowski is the founder, president, and CEO of Edwins Leadership Restaurant Institute. It trains and is staffed largely by former prison inmates and is the subject of the 2017 Academy Award-nominated documentary short, Knife Skills. Chrostowski is also a certified sommelier and a fromagère. How'd I do on that? I mean, good French? Yeah, I tried. He also ran for mayor of Cleveland in 2017. Chef was named as one of the 5 national finalists for the James Beard Award in the Outstanding Restaurateur category, which recognizes a restaurateur who uses their establishment as a vehicle for building community, demonstrates creativity and entrepreneurship, integrity in restaurant operations, and is making efforts to create a sustainable work culture. Sounds like somebody we want to talk to on this podcast, so we did. Chefs had over 550 people graduate from their program in the past decade. Edwins Leadership Restaurant Institute is a Cleveland-based nonprofit. They offer formerly incarcerated adults a foundation in the culinary and hospitality industries. They get access to social services through the program. And just as important, they receive a regular paycheck. This second chance opportunity is all too uncommon in our workforce today. But as you'll hear from Chef, this is why it shouldn't be. Let's bring it in.
There we go. Got it. I did
Very
it.
good. Great to meet you.
How you doing, Sam? I'm glad we got this thing done, man.
Me as well. Well, I guess to start out, for folks who are maybe unaware of your background and Edwin's, can you maybe just lead us in, Brandon, with some background on yourself and what you're doing?
Yeah, you bet. So, I mean, the short of it, I'll tell you the story of Edwins, how it started, and really our scope where it is today. Okay. So I had a break when I was younger. It was one of many, but the most important break. I was 18, 19, going on 19, and got arrested, facing a 5 to 10 year sentence, and I had a judge give me probation instead. So just doing some time in county jail, that was it, and really spared me a lot of my good years, in early 20s. While I was on probation, I ended up meeting a chef in downtown Detroit. He mentored me. He said, he goes, "Hey, Brandon, it's not practice that makes perfect. It's perfect practice that makes perfect." The fundamentals he taught me in that kitchen on Woodward Avenue lasted to this day. I got out of Detroit, went to the Culinary Institute of America, apprentice under Charlie Trotter, and then from there ended up going to Europe. I worked in France, a Michelin 2 and 3-star restaurant in Paris, and then New York City, where I said I'm going to be the best chef in the world. And we all know the world ends at the Hudson River. So I said, this is where I need to be. And I started climbing myself in the ranks. But I got a phone call, I remember it, 2004. And it was the chef who mentored me calling to tell me that the guy I came up with, the younger man, was murdered. 2 weeks later, another incident, the same. And I had this idea that I said, look, man, if there's a restaurant that could give someone a second chance like I had back in Detroit, if it was built, it could help others, right? In some way, shape, or form, it would work. So that's how it started. Now, fast forward about 10 years, 2012, started teaching in prison. So we continue teaching in Ohio institution, hands-on in one institution. We opened the restaurant in 2013. So it's a 6-month training program. So French fine dining restaurant, right? There's going to be no announcement you're in this idea of a nonprofit social enterprise. It's like, listen, you're just coming into a lights out great French restaurant. And for 6 months, the staff are actually students who are coming out of the criminal justice system or have been affected by it, learning every position, dining room, kitchen, as well as getting business basics and looking at P&Ls. We make sure we have you covered for driver's license or health insurance and bank account. You have to have. We've expanded that into housing. So a few years later, started doing housing. We now have 4 buildings. So if a student needs free housing, that's available. If they need a graduate housing, we have that for like $200 a month. We opened up a butcher shop, a bakery, a second restaurant. Childcare center opens this month. I got one more inspection, and I'll have the state come through next week. And we reach now not just one prison, we reach 400,000 inmates across the country who can take our video series on tablets if you're incarcerated. So, oh, and juvenile detention center too. We teach in juvie 5 days a week. So it really hits hard, and the idea is just continue to develop great leaders. If there was a motto, that's what it is, man. Just developing great leaders.
It's awesome. I mean, you've had close to, I think I read 550, 600 graduates come through the program so far.
Yeah. We just did another class on Saturday. Graduated a couple more, so we got to be at least 600, close to 600.
What's the hardest thing to teach?
It's rehumanization, right? I mean, it's not like bechamel or confit. It's really having someone feel like they're human again, and poverty, prison, that sort of thing just strips it away. And 6 months isn't nearly enough time to do it 100%, but it definitely gets someone on the pathway if they're challenged with feeling strong again. That's definitely the toughest thing to do in 6 months.
What would and the reason I ask, we had a guest on a few episodes ago. His name is Jamie McCullum. He's a sociologist, and he writes a lot about poverty and frontline work. And one of the things he said was those who are paid the least often pay the most. He talked about how only 3 and 4 of America's inmates receive no job training while incarcerated. And when they're re-entering, they're oftentimes still not done paying the cost of their incarceration.
Sure.
What would surprise another restaurateur or another CEO or executive who's listening to this right now about your experience to hopefully persuade them to consider creating more opportunities for more people within their organization?
Yeah, I think what would surprise them is looking at their own culture and find out their culture sucks. You know what I mean? And they're like sustaining this culture that is continuing all those devastating facts that you just said. Businesses are contributing to what you just said by not having a culture that can benefit others with a second chance, or someone struggling through a rough patch. I think that's like the realization. Consulting around the country, people are faced with this idea like, shit, we're not doing the right thing, or we're not doing a good job, but they're so far down the river. To change that culture around would mean a lot of changes to their time schedule, or maybe their profit margins in the short term, but in the long term would obviously, come back 5 or 10-fold. I think that's the biggest surprise, man. I mean, there's no surprise to anyone in this world what a human can do. Uh, I think that maybe there's some fear out there that people surrender to, but again, there's no story I can tell you that's not gonna be like, oh yeah, of course that's possible, right? I think the biggest surprise is like your culture sucks, and you're contributing to these issues that you see that plague our country, and you need to take the time or make the investment, which is generally more time than it is money, into fixing that culture.
I look at what you're doing, and I mean, you are, at the end of the day, through, I mean, even the program, as you have graduates coming through, you're creating a learning environment, like a high speed learning environment to get people from point A to completion and continuing to develop. Employee development is a real challenge in a lot of environments, especially in frontline environments like yours in hospitality and restaurants. I guess what any keys that make it work in your environment where, not through another point into this question, but a lot of the people that you're working with might get labeled as unskilled or low skilled by other HR folks out there in the world. I guess, how do you make it work?
For sure. So there's a couple things. I mean, I could narrow it down to just a few, right? So the first would be like, that the idea of perfect practice makes perfect, right? Excellence is always employable. Um, if you look like a Ferrari, you drive like a Ferrari, you're probably a Ferrari, right? So if you can do something that's so far above and beyond the skill set and level of what others can do, then I mean, you and I probably agree on this. I don't think your past matters, right? If you can make someone money or save them money in business, someone's looking right past that. So you just have. My advice would be one, just train to the top. Excellence is always employable. How do you facilitate that? Well, perfect practice. I always encourage employers. They'll call me and they'll say, "Hey, we need someone I need someone at the factory to cut boxes or something like that." I say, "Okay, do that. Okay." I mean, where's someone going to go with that after a year or two? Uh, the other thing I recommend is showing someone the whole perspective of the business you're in. At Edwin's, you'll work the dining room, you'll work the kitchen, use some business sense, right? As well. If you can work every position in that factory, including cutting the boxes, and look at what management looks like to work in, if you can run someone through a course like that in the front end of their employment, when they do settle in the position of whatever is needed, they understand what their action and reaction does. There's more of a roadmap on how to get to the top, right? So I think sometimes what employers will see is, there's no productivity here. Well, yeah, you show someone a tree, and they're not looking beyond that because you're not showing them beyond that, and telling them, hey, if you work here and you work your way up, you can do that. What does work your way up look like? You see what I mean? So I think introducing that whole perspective is essential. Creating a work environment, obviously, that is like we meet people where they're at. Like, we don't even ask about your offense. We say, hey, have you been affected by the criminal justice system? You say yes. Okay, good. That's all we need to know, and let's move forward. And a little sprinkle of care every now and then doesn't hurt. But those would be the five things, Sam. I say really, really rock the house here.
I read when I was preparing for this conversation, there was multiple times I heard people in interviews talk about how, like, the quote was, they didn't even ask me about my background.
Mm-hmm.
And we just live in a world where there's probably some HR and lawyers running around saying we can't do that, right?
Yeah, there is.
But
There's always a lawyer who says there's a way out. You know what I mean? There's a way you can. I mean, like, look at, man, the stuff that we do here. It's something that's never been done before because no one ever like pushed to see how it can be done, right? I said, you know what? Everyone here gets paid a stipend, right? It's not like it's that you're not getting paid $1 million an hour, which again contradicts this idea that you need $20-$25 an hour. You give someone a better future. I think that you shouldn't work them for less just because, but pay a decent wage, right? As an employer, offer a decent future. You're going to get a great result, right? But here we do a stipend because we provide everything else, okay? And I said, dude, why they shouldn't have, no one should be able to get garnished during this time that they're here. Whatever debt you owe, just give someone 6 months to breathe, get on their feet. And it's such a low amount, it shouldn't be taxed. I put all these attorneys and people, we found an exception here that, now they can prevent the garnishment of it. Your accountant there says because the income level over the course of the year, you're not going to have to pay taxes. I mean, we make sure that what they get is, bang for their buck, right? We take food stamps here and allow people to buy their food here for wholesale with food stamps if they have them, right? I mean, you see, there's all these things you can do and rewrite the system, but if you just surrender to the fear and say, hey, we can't because it's dangerous. Well, that can be accepted by some people, but if not for us, it's not acceptable to say to do that because and you just got to find a way around it. So you're right. HR is like, it's a nightmare, but I guess it's a good thing we don't have an HR department here.
well, the other thing that I had come across was you talked in an interview or in another podcast about you having you will not fail approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd imagine that, like any workplace, some folks coming in may not be immediately receptive to the environment because they're not bought in yet, and
Mm-hmm.
they're going through that process and coming out of an environment that was much different than the one that you've created. How do you create that as a leader, a you will not fail approach that in turn gets the most out of employees who maybe aren't quite bought in just yet, even though they're appreciative of the opportunity.
Yeah. So I'll give you like the nuts and bolts approach of how we do it. But I think like again, say I mean I don't have a television, man. I apologize, but don't listen to podcasts. I feel like just clear instincts is the best medicine. And there's a sense for a lot of people uh, in the program we have that the other shoe is going to drop. You know what I mean? It's just like it's always happened. It's just a matter of when. And I think it's got you gotta break that. Okay, you gotta break that to a more of a mentality of like where can I go from here? One of the happiest and saddest moments I had was a few months ago. I was up in Detroit doing this James Beard dinner. They invited a couple of us out there, and I always take a student with me or two or three, and it was in Detroit. And so when you're driving up there, you got Canada right over the Detroit River, and she was with me. She said, I'd really like to get my passport, maybe travel. Uh, and you know what? It's like there's the moment, man. Like you broke it. You broke the idea that you would fail, and now you've bought into the idea that there's a future and you could do something. You see what I mean? Like that's big psychology. So how we do it in the first 2 weeks, man, we try to hit very hard with challenges. Um, and they're simple challenges that require effort. And if you overcome them, you're confident, right? So it's memorizing how many teaspoons are in a tablespoon, how many tablespoons to a cup, how many cups to a quart, quarts to a gallon, right? You challenge and you say, okay, here's how you measure now. Now this is the effect that your measurement has when you're making a recipe. Then that affects how much money you make. And now we start talking about business and how you control costs, and this is how you know essentially determine whether there's a loss or not. Then we go over things like serve safe, so temperatures and danger zones, and then in the meantime we're making sure you have a bank account or you have your ID or a license. So um, or health insurance we want to connect you with. That's a big thing. We want to make sure you're connected with that. Um, so in a very short time of a week or two, we're trying to convince this more powerful yes that the temptation around you or doubt around you is less than the power of what's going on right now. And there's nothing that can replace time. There's nothing that can replace a challenge. That's also why the program switches positions, right? You're bartending, you're serving, you're hosting, you're cooking. I mean, because once you feel like you got it, it's time for a new challenge. You got to break and rebuild this esteem, right? This muscle we have. Uh, and so that's how we do it in practice. But theoretically, it's just about popping that bubble that something else is going to fail.
When you explain it, it's kind of like reading a recipe. It looks really easy as you
Mhm.
as
It
you're
is.
sitting in your
Yeah,
kitchen
yeah.
going through it. The Again, I think what it shines so brightly to me in what you're doing is the reality that you're seeing potential in every person that you that works with you in the environment, and makes me wonder how can we create how can we duplicate that type of environment, not just in more restaurants but in more organizations. um,
Yeah, I mean, that's what we do. I mean, we work with manufacturers, we work with other companies, and it, from the top down, it has to become a sacrifice. Um, you got to put yourself in third or fourth place every day behind your business, your community, even your family, right? And I think when people see that from the top down, they start to say, we can't, we can do that. Like we see it, we can do it, right? So on an ongoing basis, it's always practicing that. But two, it's start to implement, you know, the fact that every work culture is going to have its own like vibe, right? And like we want to make sure our culture here, you're hardworking, you're coming on time, but if the music's a little different, if the swagger's a little different, like that's it just takes on its own vibe, and that's okay. And I think some people are comfortable with that. We're very proud of ourselves and and where we've come from, and so to embrace that with whatever style, I think sometimes it's challenging. Maybe I don't know for other cultures, it's a ground up approach here, so it's hard to say. If we had to start it over, what would we do?
I mean, I'm sure you have countless stories of folks have come through the program. Is there any one that shines out to you that, again, someone, if organization listening that's trying to create a culture like you're talking about might motivate? What story comes to mind?
Oh, geez. I mean, there's a ton, man. We ask everyone to do a life plan, like when they start, like where you want to be. We're going to start to visualize these things. And when someone says like they want to have their kid back, or custody of their kid, partial or full, they achieve something like that. Like that means they spoke it, they said it, and over the time, they've achieved it. I mean, what it do for our bottom line? I don't know. I mean, we still sell wine, we still sell, foie gras, but personally, that life improved. Now you have a mother at home with an income who's has a family, and the same goes for fathers alike. You see that a lot. So I mean, everyone's got their bottom line, man, but at some point, what is that bottom line going to produce? Another watch? You know what I mean? Fancy pair of jeans. I mean, like at some point, like there's having enough or maybe more than enough than having too much. And I think if some of that space in between could be shed for helping others get to where they want to go. And for those who are on the cusp, you know what I mean? Like shit, it's business, man. I mean, like trust me, payroll comes in here every 2 weeks, and I see that train coming, and I'm always hustling, man. It's not giving a speech, it's catering. If it's not catering, we're upselling an order. I mean, you're always trying to hustle, but for those on the cusp, what it's like to have that drive, and we have that in a lot of people here, just that drives it to survive. And so
Yeah.
I never worry about when time comes, we have to ring the bell and say we got to go. Everyone goes. We rise up. So
Yeah, if I hear you right, I mean, it's also good business to do this. I mean, at the end of the day, you're unlocking the true potential of of your workforce. I mean, doing a life plan with an employee, I mean, that's wild. That's makes perfect sense, but it's maybe not something that's so common.
Yeah, like I said, man, people, I mean, you see it, Amazon's got that. I mean, around here, I think it's 40 or 50% turnover a month. 24 dollars an hour doesn't work. Okay. Helping someone get to their future and what they believe is where they want to be. That's where the gold is. And it requires hard work. All right. Nothing in this world is going to be given. You know that. You see maybe a social media feed or some movie, but the reality of life is it takes time, man. Yeah, it takes time.
Totally. Well, Brandon, last question. I appreciate you
Sure.
taking time and how busy you are. Talking about the future of work, things you're talking about are in many ways creating a future of work that is a hell of a lot better than maybe the way it was. What is your hope for the future of work?
The hope, I mean, I'd be a little selfish because our mission speaks to people coming out of the justice system, but that every human being has the right to a fair and equal future, regardless of their past. And if the future of work looked like developing systems or culture in a system within that culture that could take someone with the least and develop into the most, that to me is the hope for the future of work. So whether it's out of prison or coming through addiction or whatever that rough patch is, man. Maybe someone just got out of a divorce, they're not feeling too good, and they need to get back on their feet. I mean, whatever it is, that system within each workplace, that culture that supports the system, that would be the hope for the future of the workplace.
Brandon, thanks for taking time.
You're welcome.
Jaime, I don't know where to start on some of the takeaways here. I got like 3 pages of notes. Perfect practice makes perfect. That's a simple one. Excellence is always employable. Yeah. You need to train to the top. You need to show people the whole perspective. He even went on to talk about as a recommendation I thought was really powerful that, maybe you shouldn't even ask about the offense as you think about how we navigate the waters of creating more opportunities and second chances for people in our community. The one thing Chef said that really stuck with me that I think is a powerful point for any talent leader, any C-level executive, anybody who's thinking about how they create a workforce where everybody can compete and your business can tap into the full potential of the people that come to work every day, was when Chef said, you got to help people get to their future. As we think about the way that we're creating work today, and we got to think about the barriers that are currently blocking so many people from so many opportunities. As business leaders, we have a responsibility and an opportunity to create an environment where our people not just can access learning opportunities and put their skills to work in a variety of roles, not just because it's good for our business, but because it's good for their future. Because your workers, especially in the hospitality industry, while they may be with you today, they may not be with you tomorrow. And that's a good thing, because where they go next in their life, in their career pathway, in their journey will only be better or worse, depending on how you invest and affect the people around you. Help people get to their future. So thanks to Chef for taking time to talk to us. We know it's a crazy time. You got James Beard Awards, all types of stuff going on. If you're ever going through Cleveland, make sure you check out Chef and his restaurant, Edwins. Probably will be a meal you won't forget. Now, don't forget to subscribe to Bring It In so you never miss an episode. We've got some awesome guests lined up that you're not going to want to miss. Now, back to work.